Well, an unnatural move. Okay. Where is the unnatural move there? So their defensive rebound percentage when both guys play is something like 7.
Jab step, fire, missed the three. Boarded by Green, loose ball foul.
So Shea is very good at using that left shoulder. That one, though, to me, looks like an offensive foul because of the extension. No whistle there. Now, folks, this is a very, very difficult one because sometimes it's marginal.
Goes on the other end from the personal foul. The official pointed at Jay Will, but they're just calling it on that. Booker was trying to save it, and because of how he saved the ball and it hit Jay Williams, they're calling it.
Why is that
Jalen Williams are calling a technical on that. He was just trying to save the ball.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but even the broadcast was confused by your tech. What was the explanation that you got?
I still haven't got one. It's definitely something that has to be looked into. I heard Caruso tell him to call the tech, and, he ended up doing it. So that's one ref. In my 11 years, I haven't called a ref out by name, but James was terrible tonight, through and through. It's bad for the sport, bad for the integrity of the sport. People are going to start viewing this as a WWE, if they're not held responsible.
Ladies and gentlemen, last night, the Phoenix Suns and the Oklahoma City Thunder played Game 2 of their first-round matchup, and it was one of the worst officiated games you'll ever see. All right, and I might be biased. Because I am a Suns fan. But it was some all-time bad officiating. Some of the worst calls you'll ever see took place in that game. It was so, just like, forget the stats, forget who shot what, forget, all of that stuff. Throw the box score out the window. Because the game wasn't really all that fair. When you look at the officiating, it was just so bad. And I'm not someone who likes to blame the officials, at least entirely, for why a team lost, especially my team, all right? I'm a Suns fan. I don't like to say the Suns lost because of the referees, right? And look, hey, the Suns still could have played better last night. They still could have played better last night, but if they lost by 35, I wouldn't even be talking about this. But it was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter, and the officiating was as bad as it was the entire game. It was as bad as it was the entire game. Which makes me think, hey, maybe if the Suns weren't getting the worst calls you'll ever see, then maybe they would have won the game. I don't expect the Suns to win these games, if I'm being completely honest. I don't expect them to win, but they'll never win with the calls that are being made in these games. The calls that are being made. Devin Booker getting called for one of the worst offensive foul calls I've ever seen. And then following that up with getting one of the worst technical foul calls I've ever seen. Chet Holmgren on his own accord took a dive like Sonny Liston, and it was a foul on Oso Ighodaro. Chet Holmgren just flipping and flopping and flailing around, gets a shooting foul called on Colin Gillespie. Chet Holmgren is 7 feet tall. Colin is 6 feet tall. That is just embarrassing from Chet Holmgren. SGA, like every game, commits at least one very clear, very obvious push-off, offensive foul, no call. And there was other stuff in the game. Dillon Brooks got called for, in my opinion, a questionable offensive foul. Other stuff in the game where it's just like, what are we doing? It's insanely bad officiating. Insanely bad. And the NBA doesn't hold any of these referees accountable. The media cannot go and ask these referees, hey, why'd you go give one of the worst offensive foul calls of all time that wasn't an offensive foul? Hey, why'd you not call this push-off from SGA? Hey, why'd you give Devin Booker one of the worst technical fouls ever? The NBA doesn't do anything about these refs. The NBA doesn't do anything about these referees. They don't fine them. They don't suspend them really. They don't. They don't. The media is not allowed to. The media can't ask them questions. The NBA doesn't even punish the referees in any way, shape, or form. When the NBA, when the calls are so bad, the NBA has to do that little announcement thing like, oh, the game on so and so date, this call late in the game was actually wrong and should have been the other way. They don't even punish the referees when the NBA acknowledges they made an awful call, right? It's a whole lot of nothing. The NBA does a whole lot of nothing about these referees doing terrible, terrible officiating jobs. If anyone was the commissioner of the NBA that actually cared about how good of a job the referees do, then, dude, at least one of those referees in that game last night should never officiate a playoff game again. The referee who gave Devin Booker a technical foul should never officiate a single playoff game again, or at least he should get suspended, okay? At least he should get suspended, because goodness, how do you give a call that bad on national television in a playoff game? You know, it's just awful. Like, there's no point in even talking about the actual game. You know, it was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. You got to wonder, what would it have been if the referees weren't just, taking away points from the Suns for offensive fouls and not calling the Thunder when they commit fouls and not calling the Thunder for their offensive fouls and not giving the Thunder technical fouls for their flopping. That so many players in this game they were taking dives. They were taking dives, flopping like fish out of water. Just flailing around, doing handsprings and cartwheels and landing flat on their face for these calls. It's just crazy. And hey, this is why I say Devin Booker's the worst officiated player in the league, bro. This is why I say Devin Booker's the worst officiated player in the league. All right, I don't care what none of y'all Steph Curry fans say. Devin Booker is the worst officiated player in the league because it doesn't matter what he does. If he gets legit fouled, they don't call it. And he could have an Emmy Award, he could have an Oscar, and his acting still wouldn't be good enough for these referees to call fouls on him when he's flopping. Devin Booker's not even allowed to flop, bro. He ain't even allowed to flop. All these other players are allowed to flop. Devin Booker ain't allowed to flop. And that's why I say he's the worst offensive player in the league. Everyone else, SGA, Chet, LeBron, Luka, Austin Reeves, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, you name it. They all of those guys, they can flop all they want. But this brother Devin Booker, he can't flop at all. Devin Booker, two of the worst technical fouls I've ever seen have happened this season to Devin Booker. The one last night where he got a tech for essentially saving the ball from going out of bounds. And he also got a tech in it might have been this. It was December 31st or January 1st. The Suns played, I think it was the Cavaliers. And Devin Booker got fouled, no call. There's blood dripping down his arm. There's a streak of blood dripping down his arm because there was contact. And he got a tech because he was upset he didn't get a call. It's ridiculous. It's just absolute garbage. Garbage officiating. Garbage officiating, bro. The NBA by far has to have the worst referees in the world of any sporting league ever. Minor, major league sports, pro, amateur, doesn't matter, bro. I have seen better officiating at my community center than I have seen in some NBA games. And those brothers aren't pro. The people reffing those games aren't pro. So it's just ridiculous, bro. Just ridiculous. NBA's got to do something, but they won't.